Well, hello and welcome to another edition of For the Living of These Days. A Person is a Person edition. So love God, love your neighbor, and love yourself unconditionally. As we hear in the words of Jesus, see the image of God in each and every human being and love even your enemy. Bless those who persecute you, who speak all words against you. Love, love, love. Now the question is, how shall we live in this world, or what is our why and our what and our how? It must be centered in divine love and compassion, agape love, which is ultimately love that is beyond self, completely fixated on the other. A sacrificial love, a love for and on behalf of neighbor. For Jesus, it was loving the hell out of people and the hell out of the world, literally. Love, self-giving love for friend and foe. So hard a thing to love those who don't love you back, isn't it? So hard a thing to forgive those who won't receive it or return. I find myself these days reading a lot of Martin Luther King Jr. And the more that I'm reading him, the more that I'm understanding his philosophy behind or undergirding his passion and his commitment to justice. It's not only inspired by Gandhi, but it is also inspired by the philosophy of personalism. The name of this philosophy that inspired King and his doctoral work is the philosophy of personalism. The personalist philosophy is speaking deeply to me these days, and it's a spiritual foundation. It's very accessible to those who have religious affiliation or who don't. Personalism is this complete surrender and acknowledgement to the other, their identity as a person, that they have to be offered full dignity and grace. This personalism is a wide understanding philosophy. I came across then in my reading then of King an op-ed by David Brooks in the New York Times. And I wanted to share these words because they really spoke to me of this question of a person is a person and how we honor the person. And so the title of David Brooks' op-ed is Personalism, the Philosophy We Need. And it was written June 14th in 2018. He writes, one of the lessons of a life in journalism is that people are always more complicated than you think. We talk in shorthand about Trump voters or social justice warriors, but when you actually meet people, they defy categories. Someone might be a Latina lesbian who loves the NRA, or a socialist Mormon cowboy from Arizona. Moreover, most actual human beings are filled with ambivalences. Most political activists I know love parts of their party and despise parts of their party. A whole lifetime of experience, joy and pain goes into that complexity, and it insults their lives to try to reduce them to a label that ignores that. David goes on, yet our culture does pretty good job of ignoring the uniqueness and the depth of each person. Pollsters see in terms of broad demographic groups. Big data counts people as if it were counting apples. At the extreme, evolutionary psychology reduces people to biological drives. Capitalism reduces people to economic self-interest. Modern Marxism to their class position, and multiculturalism to their racial one. Consumerism treats people as mere selves, as shallow creatures concerned merely with the experience of pleasure and the acquisition of stuff. Back in 1968, Carol Wojtyla wrote, "The evil of our times consists, in the first place, in a kind of degradation, indeed, in a pulverization of the fundamental uniqueness of each human person." That's still true, he writes. So this might be a perfect time for a revival of personalism. Personalism is a philosophic tendency built in the infinite uniqueness and depth of each person. Over the years, people like Walt Whitman and Martin Luther King, William James, Peter Maurin, and John Paul II have called themselves personalists. But the movement is still something of a philosophic nub. It's not exactly famous. Personalism starts by drawing a line between humans and other animals. Your dog is great, but there is a depth, complexity, and superabundance to each human personality that gives each person unique, infinite dignity. Despite what the achievement culture teaches, that dignity does not depend on what you do, how successful you are, or whether your school calls you gifted. Infinite worth is inherent in being human. Every human encounter is a meeting of equals. Doing community service isn't about saving the poor. It's a meeting of absolute equals as both seek to change and grow. The first responsibility of personalism is to see each other person in his or her full depth. This is astonishingly hard to do. As we go through our busy days, it's normal to want to establish I-it relationships with the security guard in your building or the office worker down the hall. Life is busy, and sometimes we just need to reduce people to their superficial function. But personalism asks, as much as possible, for I-thou encounters. That you just don't regard people as a data point, but as emerging out of the full narrative, and that you try when you can to get to know their stories, or at least to realize that everybody is in a struggle you know nothing about. The second responsibility of personalism is self-gifting. 20th century psychologists like Carl Rogers treated people as self-actualizing beings. Get in touch with yourself. Descartes tried to separate the individual reason from the bonding emotions, and Nikolai Berdyaev said that tends to turn people into self-enclosed monads with no doors or windows. Personalists believe that people are open wholes. They find their perfection in communion with other whole persons. The crucial question in life these questions are not what questions? What do I do? Or are they who? They are who questions. Who do I follow? Who do I serve? And who do I love? The reason for life, Jacques Maritain wrote, is self-mastery for the purpose of self-giving. It is to give yourself as a gift to people and causes you love, and to receive such gifts for others. It is through this love that each person brings unity to his or her fragmented personality. Through this love, people touch the full personhood in others and purify the full personhood in themselves. The third responsibility of personalism is availability. To be open for this kind of giving and friendship, this is a tough one too. Life is busy. Being available for people takes time and intentionality. Margarita Mooney of Princeton Theological Seminary has written that personalism is a middle way between authoritarian collectivism and radical individualism. The former subsumes the individual within the collective. The latter uses the group to serve the interests of the self. Personalism demands that we change the way we structure our institutions. A company that treats people as units to simply maximize shareholder return is showing contempt for its own workers. Schools that treat students as brains on a stick are not preparing them to lead whole lives. The big point David goes on, is that today's social fragmentation didn't spring from shallow roots. It sprang from worldviews that amputated people from their own depths and divided them into simplistic, flattened identities. That has to change. As Charles Péguy said, the revolution is moral or not at all. All that being said in that article is that we need a radical transformation in embracing the person, the other, our neighbor, as a whole person created in the image of God with the potential of being loved and of loving, even when they are not. So here is to the revival of personalism as we commit to a path of radical love and nonviolence for the living of these days. Have faith and honor all in the name of love, even when it's hard to do. You just might convert the haters into lovers. The value of each and every human being is central to what it means to be alive, truly alive. And so I close with the deep, deep wisdom of Dr. Seuss. In Horton, here's a who. And these words have stuck with me this week too. From the book. And I think this is Horton speaking. Don't give up. I believe in you all. A person is a person no matter how small. And you very small persons will not have to die if you make yourselves heard. So come on now and try. So let us try, not only for ourselves, but for the world around us and those who inhabit it, persons who are worthy of love. Peace.